Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl, and this is the first in a series of special interviews that I am so excited to get to pick up again after a 2-year layoff, talking about upcoming Jazz Under the Stars, which is back for 2021. Let me first off welcome Eric Thompson, whose quintet is kicking off the first Jazz Under the Stars in 2 years. Eric, it is so great to see you in person.
It's literally great to see you in person too.
So this is a concert series 2 years in the making, because you were all set to work with us in August of 2020.
Right.
We thought we had a thing. We thought we were going to figure out a way to get maybe one socially distanced concert done toward the end of August. Then giant windstorm. So
aside from that little storm.
So about after that, we just kind of decided it's just not going to be in the cards, and we'll retool and hope for 2021. And now we are all set and ready to go, and very excited to have you kicking our season off for us. Talk about your current projects and the group that you're bringing here in just a minute. But let me start at the beginning. No one does a Eric Thompson bio without bringing up the fact that you toured as the world's youngest drummer when you were 3 years old, which I'm sure you're tired of telling that story over and over again. But my question for you is, and this was, you played all over the country, you hung out with Buddy Rich, you were on the Tonight Show. How much of that do you really remember, or is it mainly pictures and videos that you've watched since?
I have one distinct memory that I can as if it were yesterday. And actually, Buddy went on to the Tonight Show after Dick Clark's Live Wednesday, and they played the tape of the Dick Clark show that he and I performed on.
Okay.
And the vivid memory I have of Buddy Rich is there was a rehearsal, and the orchestra was there, Dick Clark was there, and Buddy and I were there, and Buddy reached into his pocket, and we were being asked by stagehands if he wanted something to eat for lunch, and both of us ordered a hot dog. He reached into his pocket and grabbed a pack of cigarettes, and the stage manager said, "We don't allow smoking on the stage." And he lit the cigarette and took a drag and blew it in the stagehand's face and said, "What did you say?" And he kept smoking the cigarette.
Of all the Buddy Rich things, that is the most Buddy Rich thing ever.
It is very Buddy. Yeah, it's like, thankfully he didn't launch into the Buddy Rich tapes from the bus on that poor stagehand. But I do remember that, and then I remember during the show, Ed McMahon walking past me with an actual reindeer. Those are two things I remember. The performance, I have the reel-to-reel and then the videotape and now the YouTube clip to remind me. But those are two specific issues that I remember.
Well, you've done just a few things since then. Yeah. I first met you when you played at the Iowa City Jazz Festival with your band Guaranteed Swahili. Right. You went to school and toured on the East Coast for quite a number of years before relocating back to your hometown. What's the difference between gigging in New York and gigging in Iowa?
I can't speak to literally what it is like now, COVID excluded.
Sure. We're talking some years ago.
Right. But the difference, I believe, is that when you're playing, it doesn't matter the night. Monday through Sunday. Obviously, there were at least when I lived there, for example, in New York, where patron numbers were lower on some evenings. But my way in with a quintet I had in New York was to open a Tuesday night at a club that no longer exists called Detour. And I was able to have a great musical mentor who was a combo coach of mine, and then he asked me to play on one of his albums. John McNeil was in the quintet, and that brought some folks, because wherever John plays, even to this day, there are hordes of people there. I would say that's the one large difference. Monday through Sunday, people are out.
You can always get a crowd.
Yeah, you can always get a crowd. Here, I would say between Iowa City, Des Moines, it's usually Thursday through Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I agree. I was in Chicago just a couple of weeks ago, and went to the Green Mill for the first time post-pandemic on a Monday night, and the place was pretty much packed.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that's wonderful that you coincidentally bring that up, because that year in 2004, that's one of the clubs we played at prior to getting here.
Oh.
At the Green Mill. And the gentlemen of whom you speak are three guys, one of whom passed a few years ago due to ALS, our bass player Tim Lunsell. But we started out as a student combo playing for Eric Rasmussen, the alto player, his master's recital. We played a couple songs. Jason Hunter, the tenor player, and I went to a club where Tim and Eric were playing called Venus Bar and sat in one night. And that's how the relationship started, where the band went from sitting in to just a quartet. And now the three of us, Jason and his wife Jenny and their children, are in Kincardine, Ontario. Eric is the jazz director, I believe, at Southwestern Community College out in Arizona. I think I have the name right. And then I'm here, directing the Academy for Scholastic and Personal Success and finishing my PhD course requirements at Iowa a year from June.
I'm glad that you brought up the Academy for Personal and Scholastic Success, because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about, kind of your non-music career. Growing up in Cedar Rapids, did you because this is designed to help students, primarily students of color,
Correct.
who don't get them in the mindset that they can go to college.
Correct.
And that it's not quite. Part of it's academic, but part of it's just to get their head in a place. Maybe a student who didn't think they could go to college, that they could. Is that how you felt growing up in Cedar Rapids?
I have thoughts of Cedar Rapids that are retroactive, working with students since 2014 in Cedar Rapids and in the bookended districts of Linn-Mar and Prairie. What jumps out to me is that I don't remember ever feeling isolated as a student. Although, as I said, looking back, I know that my first black educator outside of my family, which would be my father and then the Thompson, my grandfather and grandmother, would be, rest in power, Carter Bradshaw, who had been a friend of both of my parents. My mother, Sharon, worked in the school district for 30 years, research and evaluation. My father started in maintenance, went to building engineer, and then became the community liaison. Both of them in the district, 30 years and 38 years respectively. And I knew of Mr. Bradshaw, and then he was my government teacher as a senior. But he was my first black educator. And then,
so you went through almost 12, 13 years of schooling, and before you had an African-American teacher.
Correct. And then college, it didn't change. Even transferring from the music department in terms of majoring in percussion performance and then majoring in African American studies, I had one black professor and one black PhD student who, at present, is the director of the African American Studies, chairperson of the African American Studies Department at the University of South Carolina, Dr. Nancy Tolson, who had served as Dr. Ruth White's director here in Cedar Rapids while she was living here from Detroit. And then Fred Woodard was a professor in African American history. So now I'm up to 3, right? And my counselor was the current Board of Education president, Nancy Humbles. So I include her in that number, so 4. When I move out east, it was for music, and so then the world was completely integrated and completely diverse musically. It didn't matter what you look like. Can you swing? Great. If you can't, get off the stage. Someone else can come up here. That's right. So I say all that to say this. Having gone through Cedar Rapids, a town for which I have unconditional love and respect, the glaring fact that there are not black, brown, or biracial educators in large quantities teaching in the second largest school district in the state of Iowa is of concern. And so what Dr. Ruth White founded in 1989 was to not only provide an environment where young minds can say, hey, I'm not selling out if I know the answer to this question and I want to go to college, but that there's the cultural success of knowing from whom you've come. One of our phrase, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. And it's a very specific program for black, brown, and biracial students in Cedar Rapids to say that, hey, you are seen, you are heard, and there are black educators that look like you, brown and biracial that look like you, in this state. When you go into school in the fall, you won't see them in large quantities, but you do in the summer for 6 weeks. and we're with them every day. This year was, thankfully, we're online 3 days, in person 2 days.
I was going to ask what
Yeah.
what things look like this way. So it was this year. So it was a little half and half.
Yeah, it was half and half, and it was wonderful being, literally, we spoke earlier before starting, wonderful being back together and seeing new students. And we had a large crop of new students in conjunction with about 4 or 5 veterans. And that's the way at Sunrise, Sunset. You know, you graduate students. We graduated our largest class in 2021, students that had stayed that were in the academy for 4 years. That's my academic side, my history side, and research as both a historian and as a teacher is fulfilled there and on campus at Iowa, outside of music. But if I'm being very specific, playing jazz and teaching history are the same thing. Especially when I'm teaching, you know, specifically notating Black American history, and then playing jazz music, you know. So I'm thankful, I'm blessed to be able to do the things that I love doing every day.
Well, it's a big job working for the Academy, also working on your PhD.
Right.
But you are still finding some time to play music, thankfully for all of us. Tell me about the quintet that you'll be bringing to Jazz Into the Stars.
This quintet will feature Dr. Denmani Phillips, Robert Espy, Blake on tenors, saxes. Well, they're covering the gamut of saxes. Blake Shaw on bass, Dr. Michael Conrad on piano and keyboard, and we're bringing up for the second set to play about 4 or 5 tunes will be on trumpet and flugelhorn, Brett Messenger. And after, you know, a literal year of not doing anything, it was an opportunity to play some music that some may have heard, some may not have heard, but to promote and showcase these musicians that are, in my opinion, some of the best in the game at their respective instrument, and all of them as educators, whether they're not specifically in the classroom, as Dr. Phillips, for example, heading as a chair of the Jazz Studies program at Iowa and an associate professor of African American Studies at Iowa, and Dr. Conrad is assistant professor. These guys make it difficult because they're all extremely intelligent and they're all very good. So hopefully I remember how to set the drums up, and then hopefully I remember how to play them. But I only have 2 hours, so hopefully I can move. If I can just, like, smoke and mirrors for 2 hours, I'll be all right.
So it's quintet, and then you said Brett will be coming up to sit in a little bit. That makes me think of several of the members of this band. Last time I think you were on the Jazz Into the Stars stage was maybe for Local on the 8th.
Yeah,
or
it was. Yep.
Have you, you know, which has several of the same members. Tell me a little bit about you said some of the songs we're going to know, some of them maybe not so much. So how do you go about picking repertoire for this group?
The way I like to book is I've gone this, for me, you go through these phases when you're young and not necessarily sharp. And I speak of myself. You think, oh man, I don't want to play a gig and just play standards. But then a professor or a TA will say, have you heard the Keith Jarrett Trio? And then once you start listening to Jack and Keith, you're like, okay, it's great to play standards and really well. Or you've heard of Miles, right? You go, yeah, okay, then listen to all these. So I've come, I think, almost full circle. I love standards, but I also like being able to find, whether it be purchasing the music or paying someone to arrange, music of musicians to whom I listen that maybe aren't on the playlists, but people, for example, Tom Harrell or Joe Lovano or Steve Swallow, or unfortunately having passed a few years ago, Roy Hargrove. And I want to make sure to play that music because I like picking music that when I was young and terrible, I liked listening to, and putting it on the CD in the old, for example, in the old music building, and playing to Pat Metheny and Pat Metheny group, or Pat Metheny trio with Dave Holland and Roy Haynes, and trying to be a better drummer. And now I would say the difference is I'm older, and I still listen to that stuff. I think I'm a little better because I'm smarter. I don't try to show off every time, conserve that energy. But I like to choose music that will promote and showcase individuals. And so going to 2 saxophones front is a homage to Joe Lovano's record Tenor Legacy, where Joshua Redman and he front the band. And every chart is those two. Or the Dark Keys with Branford Marsalis, where he has Kenny Garrett on one track and Joe Lovano on another track. And I like two saxes because they're literally different musicians. They feel the music differently. They play a physically different instrument. But what they do is move the quality and the emotion forward every single note that they play. And I'm always honored and stunned when they accept a gig invitation, because I like to make music with people who I respect and admire, but also push me to be better. And so this music that I've selected is showcasing, the front end is dual saxes, and then we're doing a trio set, 3 tunes in the middle. And I didn't necessarily mean to do it this way because I realized with the passing, and unfortunately, of Chick Corea, I've chosen 2 tunes of the 3 that Chick performed on Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. But that's an opportunity to then showcase Dr. Conrad and Blake and I playing in a trio format. And then the second set with the trumpet and flugelhorn, then they get to throw in Roy Hargrove, they get to throw in Tom Harrell. And it's, I think, also, Benny Bailey and Les McCann. So I think it's a good variety of music that hopefully will keep people listening. And I also chose an original that I wrote years ago for Equilateral with Brent Sandy and Chris Mertz and Greg Mazunik that I'm going to perform the second set at Jazz Under the Stars. And it's going to be a tribute to 2 professors who passed recently of mine. Unexpectedly, Dr. David Bills, who was the chairperson for the Educational Policy and Leadership Studies program, passed a week ago, and then Professor John Rapson, who I was honored to be in JCL his first 2 years at Iowa. And so I was talking to my best friend about this, and I realized I'm prattling on, but 30 years, in 2023, I would have known and will have known John and Beth, Hannah, Claire, and Sam for 30 years.
It was, John had been in poor health for a long time, but it still was a huge blow to everyone in jazz in Iowa, and I think around the country to have that voice be stilled. But now we celebrate all and tell the stories and play all the music that we love. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, and I was so thankful that he and Beth opened their home literally to me at the beginning of my PhD work in the refurbished basement, and I lived there for the fall semester. And then, unfortunately, when COVID hit and they returned home, everybody had to scatter. But I was able to, for about 4 months, see he and Beth, if not Tuesday through Thursday, every day, at least once or twice a week. And John, I told him, I said, you saw me at the beginning. And he literally did. Had it not been for example, Steve Grismore, who came into a practice room and said, why don't you play in the jazz program? I hear you play for the basketball team. This was on undergrad at Iowa. And I said, I've never played jazz drum set before. He goes, I have a class called Jazz Combo Class. Come over to ORR room on whatever day it was. I can't remember. I walk over there. I have no idea how to play jazz drum set. I signed up for lessons with Jim Dreyer. And had it not been for Grizz or Jim, I wouldn't have been able to handle playing big band music for Professor Rapson. And I was, I had a flat top and an attitude. And I willingly accept the attitude part. And I went away with, fueled by arrogance and excitability. And I come back to this program to finish my PhD in the College of Ed. And John saw me a couple times throughout. Swahili came through, or I would sit in with bands. And my maturation process was slow, but it's because of John that I was able to go out east and do what I did. And I told him that. And I've dedicated to my parents, notwithstanding, my PhD to both Dr. Bills and Professor Rapson.
Well, as you say at the Academy, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us.
That's right.
And you just profit from that. You tell them if you get the chance, and then you try and pay it forward, I guess.
That's right. And I was thinking this morning, I didn't know what we would be speaking of, but this thought went through my head. I just had I heard somebody say in my head from years ago, why are you moving back? And I could dig into the early 2000s answer, but I remembered then immediately on the years that I'm running around on the football field teaching tenor drummers how to play better or bass drummers to march better in the drum corps that I've worked in. And some of the kids would ask about where I marched, a drum corps in Indiana, and it was great. But as my mentor Brent Montgomery would say, you make your own memories now. Use those, but make your own. So my coming back here, first and foremost, is to come back here for my family. But now, more than ever, it just doesn't, you just don't need a 718 area code, right, or a 917 to impart what you may consider wisdom or knowledge, or show somebody the value of quality work and compassion and understanding and love. And so it'd be very easy to move back to Brooklyn or Manhattan, but I love my town, and I love making music here. I love being able to play with Dr. Bob Washut and Chris Mertz, and Dan O'Lean, and I love being able to perform for you at Jazz Under the Stars, which is, as a kid, I remember knowing about that, and I still think it's wonderful. I'm very old, and I still get really excited because I really love it. That's why I like the TV show Parks and Rec, because Leslie Knope, fake character, but she loved Pawnee, Indiana, and there isn't anything wrong with loving your hometown and trying to give back to those that gave to you. And so what Dr. White, what my father, what my mother, what the Cedar Rapids School District gave me, what the music programs gave me, I was able to take and go to Iowa, NEC, Northeastern, Columbia, and come back. And I want to impart whatever I have in here that I can remember to a kid who would like to be maybe actually a good drummer, a good musician, possibly a good teacher, or hopefully a good human.
We're going to be making new memories on August 5th with the Eric Thompson Quintet at Jazz Under the Stars. And sure hope that you'll join us. We've ordered good weather.
That's right.
Yep, we'll be gathered in Knoll Ridge Park for the first time in more than 2 years. And I just want to thank you for being here with me today, Eric, and thank you for kicking off the series for us as we gear up for what hopefully will be a big return.
Pleasure's all mine, Dennis. Thank you.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:20, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or however you get your podcasts. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.